Hey friends, we're back. We're a little bit late, but if you have ADHD, then you know that we struggle with time management. So I am here with you. Thank you again for watching and coming back. If you watched with us last week, then you know that we had an amazing psychologist on and we talked about what ADHD is and how it's affecting your money. And today's guest is going to dive a lot deeper because we're going to talk about the ways it's going to affect the way you're probably making your money or probably will at some point in life. I'll explain to you why we're more likely to make money in this way. But if you are joining with me now, tell me what state you're watching from. And if you are in the replay mode, I want you to tell me in the comments, replay crew, so I know that you're here and I can still connect with you guys. Anyway, I said that our guest today is going to make the connection between ADHD and how you're probably making money because many entrepreneurs have ADHD. I read a stat from, I think it was UC Berkeley, that said that if entrepreneurs are 30% more likely to report having ADHD. And I'm not surprised by that because people with ADHD tend to be creatives. So they tend to be good at art and music and all kinds of creative things. They have extraordinary visionary brains, and so they have a million ideas hitting them all at once, all the time, probably in their sleep and in the shower. And these ideas can be remarkable business opportunities, but we have a unique set of obstacles. So I brought to the audience today Michael Dickey, who is going to share some amazing things with us. So if you find yourself, well, if you have a business, if you find yourself daydreaming about starting a business, but the thought of administrative tasks stress you out, almost to the point of paralysis and saying, I don't know if this is for me, I really want you to stay tuned because the solutions Michael's going to talk about today is going to blow your mind. It blew my mind the first time I heard them and it changed everything. And I would love that for you. So if you guys have questions, please drop them in the comments, ask them in the chat. You have my permission to engage. We are live, so ask them in real time. But if you're watching in replay, ask them again because Michael may come back to our comments and answer them after the fact. So if you're watching it and you missed this live, still join in. Hey, Tamara, thank you for joining. I look forward to you engaging in this conversation because I know what you do for a living and you're going to be bumping and changing a lot of people's careers. And so for you personally and for the people who you're going to support, I love that you're involved. Any other audience members, say hey and tell me where you're from. And then I am going to introduce you to our guest. Listen, if you have a business and you have ADHD, you need to subscribe to both of our channels. I'll make sure I put that information in the description. If you know someone who has a business, even if they don't have ADHD, please share this with them. Do not be selfish. Ain't no fun if the homies can't come. Share this live so that they can get this tea too, because it applies whether you have ADHD or not. But if you have ADHD, you really need to be in the room. So, without further ado, I want to introduce my amazing guest, Michael Dickey, to the conversation. He is the owner of Flow State Executive Coaching. Let me get it right. Hello, Michael. How are you?
Hey, Bee. Good. How are you? I'm glad to be here. Hi, everyone watching, by the way.
I am amazing. Thank you so much for being here today. I know that you are a busy man, and I really appreciate your time.
Well, no worries. I appreciate you. So thank you for having me.
Well, before we get into your formal introduction, I would love for the audience to understand how you changed my life personally and why they want to keep listening. So for the audience that doesn't know, I am a member of the Financial Coach Academy, which is a business coaching group for financial coaches. So I met Michael through that lens. Gosh, what is this, 2024? So I started my business in 2017. So probably about 7 years ago. And so I knew you as being the co-founder there. And it wasn't until I want to say 2019, I don't know when you started doing the KOLBE exams,
Yeah, yeah, I was 19. Yeah.
that I took the KOLBE exam with you. And it completely changed the trajectory of my life because I almost got out of doing something I completely love. I love financial coaching with all my heart. I always have. I always had an idea of what I wanted to do. I just didn't know it was like a profession. But the administrative tasks, the executive needs of a business were driving me crazy. I didn't love them. They burnt me out. My analytical brain was constantly in overwhelm, and I feared being successful.
Mm.
I had confidence that I would become a successful entrepreneur in this work because I knew I did a good job. I knew I had a passion for helping people, and I cared more about the people than I did about making money, honestly. So I knew I would never give up, that I would want to do this. But my fear is that I would attract a lot of clients and then I would struggle with the behind the scenes work. And so I didn't want too many clients because I didn't want to have too many administrative tasks associated with them. And I almost thought like maybe I can't do this because if I don't grow my business, it's not going to be sustainable. And sitting down with you to do the KOLBE exam completely freed me because it gave me permission to get what I needed, to hire help
Mm.
earlier than other people might have, because I knew it was better for me to stay in my zone of genius and work the
Mhm.
things that I was really uniquely good at and hire support for the things that I just didn't want to do, that I could do, but it would just take way too much time. And why? My time was worth so much more. So thank you so much for pursuing this certification in the KOLBE, because what you illuminate for everybody is going to be life changing for them. And it's going to give them clarity about not just how they move in business, but how they move through life. And it's going to give them permission to be themselves.
Mhm.
Because, yeah, it's just game changing. So thank you so much, Michael.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad.
So if you could tell my audience about yourself, who you are, what you do, and I would love for you to start with also sharing your story, your own journey with ADHD.
Sure. So I'll start with my story. When I was growing up, in the 80s and 90s, the ADHD was the kid, was that little boy that's in the corner, like, almost lighting a fire in the corner type of a thing, right? And so I was never that kid. I was never the hyperactive kid, but I was always the kid that had a messy desk. My locker was always messy. Our schools would give us like planners to
Mm-hmm.
keep track of homework and stuff, and I could not use it. I could not use it. And I would always start something and be really excited about something, a new hobby or just anything. And then in a couple of weeks, it would just be, I'm over it. I would even into grad school. Like I went to undergraduate school for athletic training, sports medicine, physical therapy, those type of things. And I had a thesis where I was working in grad school, and by the time I was done, not only was I just extremely burnt out, and looking back, it was a lot of KOLBE related things, but I was like, the results that I was getting from my research was not exciting, and I was like, yeah, okay, I'm done. So there's just a lot of like these patterns that keep happening, and so fast forward to about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, we adopted our son. And we noticed that when he was 2, and we noticed that when he was, probably 3 or 4, started to show like ADHD stuff really started to show up, and really hyperactive and impulsive and those type of things. And his pediatrician was having us fill out the forms and the surveys and the questionnaires. And I was like, oh, that's me. Oh, that's me. Oh, yeah, I do that too. And like 9 out of 10, things was me. And so that started to make me think. And I went to my primary care physician, and he was like, yeah, you probably have it. It sounds like you do. I filled out some of those, you can take some tests online that confirm those things for you. And he said, well, you probably have it. It sounds like you do, but you're almost 40. Um, why? You're going to have to go get tested for it, and that's expensive, and your insurance doesn't cover it. You and you got this far, you're really successful. Why? Like, what are you going to get out of getting medicine? like completely dismissed and invalidated everything, every concern that I had. And so it was just last year that I was officially diagnosed and got some medication. And that was just instantly life-changing. You know, within an hour of taking medicine for the first time, my Adderall for the first time, I was like, went from having like 5 different like rock song guitar solos going on in my head of like to like classical music. And I remember feel like I was like, whoa, like it hit me hard. And so that's kind of my ADHD story. But when I retired from athletic training, I went to work with my wife and kind of help her on the back end of her financial coaching business. It was the only thing I was doing was administrative back end stuff. And I was like, it just kept dropping the ball and kept getting yelled at. And if I wasn't her husband, I would be fired 100%. And I would have fired myself. And, you know, so it's just all these things in my past start adding up. And it's ADHD and the things that I learned from my KOLBE assessment, my KOLBE results, and those type of things that as I grew and started to become more of a business coach for financial coaches, once I get my official diagnosis of ADHD, I was like, you know what? I've learned some skills and habits and things that can help entrepreneurs with ADHD. And KOLBE has been a game changer for me and all of my clients. And all of these things together makes for something unique that business owners that have ADHD don't typically get.
Wow. So there's so much that you said in there that I don't want to miss any of these little highlights. So I'm going to go all the way back. First of all, I feel like you completely like glazed over some major accomplishments because you shared with us that, you know, the struggles with going to college and, you know, while you were studying sports medicine, but you completely missed telling the audience that you were in sports medicine for the Harlem Globetrotters.
Yeah. That was, I was athletic trainer for the Harlem Globetrotters. And honestly, if I were single, I would still be doing that to this day. Cause that was, I mean, not only did I love the Harlem Globetrotters growing up, you know, and like, whether it was seeing them on TV or like, you know, when they were on Scooby-Doo, you know, like all of those things that I remember, but it was so magical. Right. And like, I literally got to sit on the bench with the Harlem Globetrotters every single day.
Talk about a daily dopamine hit.
Right? Exactly. I was part of the show sometimes, and I was in charge of a lot of things, and every day was different. And so like with everything that I know about myself is like, that is why with ADHD and how I problem solve, it was like a perfect fit for me. So it was fun. So there's that.
What I want to go back to is something you said about even getting diagnosed is you go to your doctor and they go, well, you're 40 years old now. And the first thing I'm thinking is like, oh, so I guess you struggled this long. Why not you only got a few years left of living. Just struggle for a little while longer.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, now I think about like how many times adults have probably heard that and then dismissed and invalidated. Mm-hmm. And it's such a backwards, wrong statement to make. Mm-hmm. and to give to someone like, well, I know, but deal with it. Like,
because would you say that about any other medical condition? Like you've had cancer this long, like, what's the point? Like, because I could live a better quality of life for the rest of my life if I'm formally diagnosed and know what I'm dealing with. And I have the ability now to advocate for myself in the workplace, in a corporate workplace, even if you're not an entrepreneur, to be able to now formally be able to ask for the accommodations you need or communicate to your kids and your spouse about why you do things the way you do them or why you need things the way you need them. Like, exactly. It's a big thing. And that insurance that doesn't cover it. So it doesn't even make it easy. And that again explains the obstacles to people with ADHD being 1, diagnosed, being 2, taken seriously, and then it not causing a financial hardship to go through that process of discovery.
Yeah. It's crazy. The hoops and the steps that, I mean, it's ironic to a point of being funny of like the steps and hoops that you have to jump through to be diagnosed with ADHD, which is literally what people with ADHD don't do. Mm-hmm. And so if you know what I mean? It's like,
never mind.
Yeah, I'm good. I'll deal with it. So it's sad that knowing that people can have these resources, but there's just hoops and a wall that we have to jump through.
And then I suspect that you're probably, because I know you in adult life, you're gifted now. I'm going to assume you were probably gifted as a child too, because it's not lost on me. You know, my audience are gifted Black women with ADHD, and we are often, almost always, late diagnosed. And that's for a variety of reasons. Race plays into that too. But oftentimes the giftedness is the biggest reason why we don't get diagnosed early on, because we're not presenting like hyper boys. We're presenting like talkative girls, or maybe daydreaming, because our mind won't shut up. And so we're thinking about ideas. And so the teacher's missing out because we're getting great grades, but they don't know how we burnt the midnight oil on Sunday night to do it at the very last minute. They're not seeing ADHD at home. They're seeing us show up with good grades. And so it's completely getting missed. And so like you, I didn't discover that, wait a minute, I might have ADHD until my daughter was being diagnosed. And like you, I was reading like, check, this is crazy. I think it's me. And then learning that it is very hereditary. And so it's very likely that she does have it, because I very much have it. And I suspect my mother has it. So, you know, thank you so much for sharing your story about ADHD, because I think a lot of people can relate to both feeling all along like something was different, not quite being able to put your hand on it because you were achieving really well in some places, and being dismissed by medical professionals or your teachers or some adult in your life, and being made to feel like you should be able to just figure it out and navigate through it, and that it's not worthy enough of exploring more, and finally getting to that point of clarity late in life, probably feeling like you wasted so much time and you could have accomplished so much more if somebody had noticed it earlier. But being resilient to still learn more about it, because it allows you to become now a better parent to a child with ADHD, which is the reason why I explored it so much and ended up deciding to coach people with ADHD around their money, because I knew that there wasn't enough people supporting them, the same way there's not enough people supporting people in business with ADHD. So thank you for what you do.
Well, thank you. And same to you. And, you know, I think there's so many people, and we're just, I think medicine is catching up, but there's still just underserved populations. And I mean, there's so many reasons. There's systemic issues that are really letting people down, you know, and some people more than others, and some populations more than others, obviously. And I know, and it's not missed on me, that I know, being how privileged I am, that it's hard for me to get some help. It's even harder for, underserved populations to get help too. Yeah, exactly.
People in poverty. Yeah, it is because we often get diagnosed as being bad. Being disrespectful
and dismissed, like, and the end of it.
We might get an ODD diagnosis, oppositional defiant disorder, but not ADHD. And as opposed to getting the support. So there is definitely the racial, the economical barrier, and then just the social barrier that stigmatizes ADHD, and especially this misunderstanding that people with ADHD are just lazy or just whatever it is. So there's so many barriers to both getting diagnosed and wanting to be diagnosed in the first place. So labeled. Thank you so much for adding that in there. Very late in life, totally dismissed. Thank you so much, Tamara, for adding that context. I knew that there are people in our audience who can relate to our story. So thank you again. So tell me a little bit more, and keep the comments coming in the chat. We really want to make sure that we are engaged with you and answer any questions you have. I read in a magazine, I think it was like Attitude, but ADD was of it, about entrepreneurship and ADHD. And it talked about 8 traits tied to success, like the good things about ADHD. And the number one trait that they listed was our risk taking and leaps of faith, which to me was ringing impulsivity. Like sometimes that works in our favor, right? And what they said was, we tend to reject solutions that seem to be normal, trusting our own instincts and moving ahead with something unproven, while our more risk averse peers insist it would never work. So being an entrepreneur at its core is about bringing a different solution. To me, it's about bringing a different solution to a problem that enough people want solved. Like, to me, like, if you're going to start a business because you have a solution and a different solution, and you have to be willing to reject what's the solutions that society's already giving us and saying, something tells me there's a better way to do this. Something tells me that there's another something out there. And we know we look crazy in that moment because social norms, and yet we're willing to look crazy and figure out something different, a different solution, and go out there and bet our money and bet our time on our solution, and thus entrepreneurship exists.
Yeah.
And so, as I said earlier, UC Berkeley had a study that said that 30% of all the entrepreneurs, 30% of them are more likely to report having ADHD. So it's not even a small margin that you're more likely to pursue entrepreneurship if you have ADHD. And so, can you share with people some of the common problems that people with ADHD tend to face running a business? Because we're going to get in it. So let's go ahead and proactively figure out what our obstacles are going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, I mean, there are many, and like you said, that there are pros and cons to ADHD, and the being able to take risks and being flexible with your time. Like, there's some things that just drive us to be like, I don't want to be boxed in to somebody else telling me what to do and being in charge of my ideas and being in charge of my my schedule. But also on the other end, there are those struggles, and I think one of the bigger ones is time management and prioritization. And that was one that when I switched from, I was working in a physical therapy setting, and I was not in charge of my schedule. So I had, I was seeing, I don't know how many patients a day in physical therapy, but okay, see you later. See you tomorrow, or see you in a couple of days for your next treatment and the next visit. And they would go schedule with up at the front desk. And all I had to know was, hey, who do I see next? Who do I see next? So time, but when I went on my own and I was like in charge of my own calendar, oh God, it's a nightmare. And so I think those are the big problems. And also on top of that, I said prioritization. Like, I know I have all of these tasks. There's a lot of things I need to be doing. I don't know where to start. I have no idea which is more important. And a lot of that is that I think we might know that they're important, but also I think what it boils down to is they don't give us that dopamine hit because it's not exciting. It's not fun. It's not the thing that we started a business for. We didn't start businesses to do paperwork.
Absolutely not.
Right? We didn't start our business to schedule people. We started our business to be solving problems for people and helping and giving those solutions and, all those other reasons. And so prioritization can be a problem. Organization and planning, strategic planning for your year, goal setting. Like, those are things that they're all part of this big, long process, which we know is important to do. We know you have to set goals. We know you have to plan, but that is just the executive dysfunction that we have does not allow us to do that very well.
What's so funny about that is, like, when you don't know that these problems exist uniquely to us, it can make you have lower self-esteem because you'll start to question your own gift. You'll start to think like, well, maybe I'm not a good artist. Maybe I'm not a good baker. Maybe I'm not a good financial coach. Maybe I'm not a good writer, because you're confusing your ability to manage your business and the administrative tasks in your business with your skill and your gift. And that was what was starting to come up for me, because I was frustrated with the anxiety and stress I had around, okay, I have a million things, our ability to think far and wide. Like, we have this amazing gift to be able to see a million details and how they connect. But then again, the prioritization part comes up, because now we can't think about what comes first, where other people they're not even thinking about these things, which is not necessarily a good thing because they can't see things coming. But that also means they're not paralyzed into action because they don't have the worry of the other thing. So our foresight is our gift and our curse,
Mhm.
because what comes first for us.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And there's just um, so those people that do have that strength and gift and talent to be able to plan. Some of them, do have ADHD, but there's it's a very small percentage, and we could talk about that in a little bit. I think about like what are some traits that all people with ADHD have, and what are some outliers. That's very interesting about like the planning that we can or can't really do very well. Um, let's see what so other struggles for that planning is like there's some things on the emotional side, like the emotional regulation can be an issue, especially with rejection.
Mm.
And I think I've always been rejection is not a good thing for me personally, and I just thought that some people just
You just think I'm
don't
just
handle rejection.
sensitive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I want to please everybody,
Mhm.
but now thinking back and like knowing what I've learned about rejection sensitivity is that I don't want to be rejected by hearing a no. So what do? I avoid situations where I'm going to hear a no, and I try to please everybody so I don't hear a no.
Mhm.
But when you're an entrepreneur, you have to go out and put yourself out there, and I mean, it's guaranteed you're going to hear a no.
Mhm.
You want to hear 10 no's before you hear a yes. But
Mhm.
that yes is what's worth it. But the no's are so hard on ourselves.
Yes.
So
We got
that's hard.
we have a psychologist in the room, and she said we call it rejection sensitivity dysmorphia. I am
Excuse me.
mixing my words today. And that observation, I didn't know that rejection sensitivity dysmorphia was part of ADHD. And when I read it, it made so much sense why I was struggling, and not just in my business, but in my career, the places that I struggled, right? I could excel and struggle at the same time, right? I was afraid to ask for raises, afraid to put myself out there because, again, the fear of rejection, the fear
Mhm.
of being rejected or disappointing somebody would keep me in my bubble. In a business where I do really good, I'm afraid to go to networking events. Like if you remember in the very beginning of Financial Coach Academy, I'm dreading the idea of going to networking events. I don't want to do it. I feel like I'm bothering people. I don't want to,
Mhm.
I'm perfectly
Mhm.
comfortable when they talk to me first because then I know
Yes.
they want to hear from me. But the idea of me putting myself out there first was like, oh, well, how am I supposed to grow my business if I won't even tell someone about what I do? How am I supposed to grow my business if I don't like sales because of the possibility of rejection? How am I
Mhm.
supposed to advance my career if I'm afraid to apply for the job? So the awareness that that's something that I'm dealing with gave me grace for myself, and it also gave me a different level of determination to work through that obstacle.
Mhm.
Like it's gonna be there, but I'm learning things like in therapy right now. I'm learning things like how to regulate my parasympathetic or activate my parasympathetic nerves so that I could at least get my body aware, like you're not in danger, girl. Because that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
It feels like you're gonna die.
Yes. Yes. It
Everything
does.
feels like a threat.
Yeah. Yes.
And once I can regulate myself, then I'm like, okay, is this thought even rational? Like, what do you mean
Mhm.
you're not qualified? Have you seen your resume lately?
Yes.
What do you mean they don't want you to speak? How many people have told you you're a wonderful speaker? And it's rebuilding the confidence to go out there and do what I need to do in business. So thank you for bringing that up, and thank you for that technical term, Dr. Barry.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Barry.
So thank you again for sharing the common problems that people in ADHD face. So if you can tell us a little bit more about the Kolbe exam, because
Yeah.
I took the Kolbe, I had never heard of it before. And I took it before I knew about ADHD and its connection. So at the time,
Mhm.
I think you hadn't even been diagnosed yet when I did my
No.
Kolbe. So
No.
we didn't even have that context about the connection. But can you tell us a little bit more about what the Kolbe exam examines in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. So Kolbe has been around, and it is KOLBE, and it's named after Kathy Kolbe, who has created the theory about 30, 40 years ago. And side note, she is the most wonderful, validating person you'll ever want to meet, because I think what I've learned from her is that everyone has innate gifts and talents, and everyone has innate value. And that is really what I like to remind people about themselves, is that, yeah, you have ADHD, but look at what your strengths are. And
Mm,
let's focus on those strengths. And that really is what Kolbe identifies. And so if you think about what, and this is very general, but there, like, as far as our minds go, there's three different parts. And that's not the brain. It doesn't include brain chemistry, those type of things, but there's the personality part of your brain, which is how you feel about things. It's your emotions, it's your values, it's what motivates you. It's those type of things. And we can assess that with a DISC assessment or a Myers-Briggs or an Enneagram. And if you think about what what your values are and what motivates you now compared to, say, when you were like fresh out of high school or a kid, probably quite different. So we know that part can change, and this is where therapy comes in, and this is where coaching comes in, and we can change how we feel about things and how we emotionally react to things. And that is not what Kolbe assesses. There's also another part of the mind, is the cognitive part, which is how you think about things. And that is, we can assess that with an IQ test, or a Wonderlic, or an SAT, or an ACT, or any standardized test of any kind, like your reasoning ability, how you think about things, your knowledge, your experience, your education. And that is not what Kolbe assesses. What Kolbe assesses is the part of your mind that's the cognitive part, and that describes how you problem solve, how you do things. And I think the best descriptor is your mental energy capacity to do things. So if you think about, like, when you're working on something and you're like, man, I could do this for hours, and I actually feel energized still.
mm-hmm.
You have a big energy cup, a big gulp size cup, to do that thing all day. But there's other things when we're problem solving that we have like a shot glass for. And those are the things where you're like 20 minutes in and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm done, or, because being energy depleted by doing something makes you feel, and this is where we all kind of are one big conglomerate of all these things, but it translates over to your feelings about, I hate doing that
Mm-hmm.
because it drains my energy. So what do? You procrastinate or avoid doing that thing.
Mm.
Because your body knows that is energy depleting for you. You only have this much, but you need this much to actually do that task. So it's a way to identify where your mental energy is for when you're problem solving or you're doing things. And the really cool thing with the research that Kolbe Corporation has found is that your results don't change. They've done a 20-year validity study, and statistically speaking, your results don't change. So it's kind of these things where you're born with it and you die with it. It's
Mm-hmm.
not genetic. There's no correlation between your parents or your children and your results. So it's almost like, hey, however you think about when you become a human being and a person, like when that happens, the dice are rolled and that's what you're given. It's
Right.
not, and this is where it's even more amazing, is that it's not biased by anything. It's not biased by race, by gender, by age, by socioeconomic status. And that's one of the reasons why I feel like it just validates that people have this inherent value and gifts that they can give. And if we find these, this is where you're working in your flow state for the rest of your life. And that's why I call my coaching business Flow State Executive Coaching, is because I want to help people that are entrepreneurs, especially with ADHD, find that flow state. So all they're doing is like focused energy, productivity, and finding ways to do the other things that we don't naturally do.
I love that. So wait, let me go back and revisit and make sure I got all the parts of the brain right. So we
Please.
got the cognitive, which is the Kolbe
Yep.
one. That's how you do
Correct.
things, or the energy you have to do certain tasks. The
Do things, yeah.
cognitive, that's kind of like what you know. And then what's
Yeah.
the third one? Because I didn't write that one down.
Yeah, sure. It's called affective.
Ah,
So like your affect, like some people might have a flat affect, but it's like it's the personality. It's your
okay.
personality.
Okay. And this makes sense why with people with ADHD feel like I know what to do, right?
Mhm.
That's the cognitive. I just can't figure out why I can't do it
Yeah.
or where the obstacle is in taking the action. It's not about intelligence. It
No,
is
absolutely.
something different. And all my life, I felt like I struggled to articulate what the obstacle is because I felt like I'm too smart to be stuck. I couldn't figure out where the
Mhm.
stuckness was because intellectually I felt like I could see and make sense. Like even on tests, I know it makes sense to just skip this and go to the next. And I can't figure out why I can't because my natural, and we'll get into my KOLBE results, y'all. I'm going to be transparent and show you all my KOLBE results. My natural style is I want to fact find first. I want to go
Mm.
and research and then I'm quick action and take action. So I'm like, it makes so much sense why I'm finding myself stuck. And I just couldn't figure out a way to explain that to my guidance counselors in college, my teachers. I know it makes sense. And yet here I am. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a lot.
Yeah, it
So
is. Yeah. But I think really quick, just to your point, that is so true that I mean, with ADHD and with there are a lot of smart kids and people that are extremely gifted, but are held back not only for systemic reasons, but also because they have ADHD, but they're also like extremely brilliant.
Mhm.
And they never have the opportunities to nurture their natural abilities and talents. And that's really sad
Mm,
that's where we are, that everybody has the potential to be amazing at something. And I don't mean that you need to be like a superstar to be amazing at something. You know, that if some people say, hey, if you're gonna be a janitor, which nothing like that's a very important job. But if you're or a ditch digger, right? If you're gonna dig ditches, be the best gosh darn ditch digger that you're ever gonna be. But people like that is the limit that people are given. Like,
mhm.
well, this is all you're going to amount to. But we have so much unmet potential.
Right, because we don't get to nurture it. I like what you said because at first when we did the KOLBE and I was looking at the test, I was like, "Oh, so these are my weaknesses." And you were like, "No, this test isn't
Mm,
about a weakness. It's
yes,
about which tasks drain your battery, like the tasks that you have the energy for.
yes,
So you need to understand which tasks fill you up and which fast tasks drain you, so you understand when to shift into tasks that are going to fill you back up so that you have the energy to cycle back to these tasks that are getting on your nerves." And
absolutely.
that was like, oh, okay. This is
Mhm.
making a lot more sense because some of the tasks that felt like I can do them really well sometimes. It's just I don't have the battery for a lot of it. And that
Yes,
was
that's
very
exactly right.
freeing.
That's exactly right. And so when you show your results, we'll talk about that a little bit more in depth. But that is we can we can do anything, right? We can plan.
Mhm.
Can I plan for 40 hours a week? No.
So, should you
Uh,
be in a career that
right.
requires you to do that task for 40 hours a week?
No, definitely not. So we could talk about that more when you see your results, because I think it'll make more sense. But there's, um, yeah, it's there are just things, and this is where some strategies come in about like, hey, so what are you supposed to do when you're an entrepreneur with ADHD? And
Mhm.
because I have to do all of the things, but you need to give yourself permission to say, I literally don't have the mental energy capacity to do all the things.
Mhm.
And then so that's the question is, well, what do you do with those tasks? When you have administrative work to do, but you literally avoid that like the plague, well, how do you get that done?
Right, because it still has to get done.
It's get
So
done.
I'd love to share my scores now. So that way, when we're talking about scores, we can give them context. Because I have some more
Yes.
questions about what to do and who to hire. Um, but I feel like showing my scores first would probably help them understand the next part of the conversation. So I'm going to put my scores right here for y'all. So y'all can
Look at
look
that.
at Betty's, what is it, cognitive part of her brain.
That's right. Do you, let me zoom in. Just let me see if I can zoom in just a little bit so we can. Boom. There we go. Okay. Cool. Great. So this is. You want me to explain it a
Go
little bit?
off. Like,
Okay,
let them
cool. All
know.
right.
I'm an
All
open
right.
book.
Oh, here we go. All right. So, really quickly, so you see that there's like 4 columns there, and your Kolbe results come out like with a number. So it's shorthand. Betty would say, "I'm a 7463." And then somebody that knows Kolbe, oh, okay, cool. Now I know. I'm a 5375. And you see those 4 columns there, and they're basically 4 different modes that we use when we're doing things, when we're problem solving. And the first one is fact finder, and that describes how you gather and share information when you're problem solving. Follow through describes how you plan and organize when you're problem solving or doing things. Quick start describes how you deal with risk and uncertainty. And implementor is not how you implement things, but it's really how you use implements to solve problems. Implements are like tools and things, and we can talk about that in a minute, because that's I think the most difficult to understand. And really, you see, and I don't know, Betty, if you saw this, but you saw 3 in implementer, and you're like, oh my gosh, I suck at implementer. Oh my, it's like, why am I not a 10 in everything? A 10 is just as important as a 1. 10 is not best, and 1 is not failure. It's the spectrum that we live on, and knowing that these never change, we can't change them. You can't coach somebody to be higher than a 4 in follow through. You can't train somebody to be less than a 6 in quick start. So we have to be obstinate about these things and say, I'm going to do these things because I do them well and I have the mental energy, and then other things I'm going to not do, and come up with some strategies on how I not do them. So let's see. So with your fact finder, Betty, you are a 7. So you initiate. With the more, you have a lot of mental energy for research, specifics, data, details, all those kind of things. So when I say, hey, Betty, here's a problem, go solve this, the first thing you're going to do is go research.
So wait, can I pause here? Because when you first told me this, I was like, absolutely not. I don't like to read a bunch of things. Like, I hate it. I want to go look at an image. But then when you asked me if I was going to decide to buy something, what would I do first? And I was like, Google it. I would look up data. I would look up I would watch videos on YouTube to see what other people said and how it worked. I absolutely start with fact finding anything. And this is why I'm usually the best person to refer, because I've already done all the research. If I said it works, this ain't a guess. I went and looked at reviews. I tried it out. I researched. I looked at everything I could look at to make a confident decision. You're right. I hate having to read all of it, but I feel like I physically can't make a decision without researching first.
Definitely. Yeah. And remember, this is like, if you know how to do something already, this a lot of times doesn't come into play because you're not problem solving how to figure out how to do that. But when you're in the moment of problem solving or figuring out how to do something, or like, hey, Betty, you and I are going to start this project. Like, I'm going to say, hey, why don't you go do some research first? Because that's where you have a lot of mental energy to do that.
I'm naturally curious too.
Yeah.
Probably part of that fact finding is I want to learn. I want to understand. I want to know. if I'm in somewhere and they say a word I don't know, I want to pick out Google and look up what that word means. I have to. So I'm sorry for I had a lot of initial resistance, like, what?
Yes. And a lot of people do, like, oh, that doesn't sound like me. But then when we start to like think about when that actually shows up, you're like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense.
It's not understanding the context, like like organization and planning, which was the next one. I was like, have you seen my closet? The level of organization that's there. But when you said to me, I'm more of a reviser, like I'm starting with a blank slate takes so much. I'm overthinking, I'm overanalyzing. It takes me a lot. And I was like, oh, I feel seen for the first time, because I am good at taking something that already exists and being able to quickly see how they could do it better. Change this, change this, change that. But like a blank slate, no, give me an idea of what you want to go for, and then I can adjust it. But nothing, I need something to work from. I need clay. I can't, I
Yes.
struggle, I should say. I won't say I can't, but I do struggle to start from nowhere. So again, that was another area where I was like, absolutely not. And then I
Yeah.
realized I'm going to go on Pinterest and look for inspiration first. And then I'm going to revise. I'm going to look at a recipe and ignore the recipe and recreate it, but I'm going to start from somewhere. So you're right.
Yes. Yep. And to your point with that follow through, when you're like in a 1, 2, or 3, when you're lower, we're not supposed to say lower because lower is can mean worse. So when you're on that short side of 1, 2, or 3, that's called resistance. And so I'm a 3. So when you're a 1, 2, or 3 or something, you resist using that action mode. And so I resist organizing and planning when I'm problem solving. So it's if somebody says, okay, here are the 25 steps you have to follow to achieve this. I resist that. Like, oh, I'm not doing all of those steps. I resist. So what is the strength? You might say, what is the strength in resisting steps? Well, I would say, why are we doing this manually? This is redundant. I'm going to make that beautiful 25-step system more efficient.
Oh, okay. Wait a minute. Because I just heard you say, what is the strength in resistance?
Yeah.
The low number. Like what is the
Yeah.
power in having resistance here? Is you're unwilling. So for someone who's low fact finder, they're unwilling to waste a bunch of time going down a rabbit hole of research, and they're going to be able to probably have a higher quick start, right? And take action. I don't know if
those are all independent. Those are independent. But to your point is, I think what you mean to say is, you would need potentially a lot of time, relatively, to do your research to move forward with a process, with a problem solving, right? Somebody that's like a 2 in fact finder would say, you know what? Just give me the overview and a couple bullet points. That is all the level of information that I need. So the strength is the research phase of things. They would be like, Betty, you've been on this research mode for a week. I see what you're doing. We have enough information. Let's move forward. So they make that part of gathering and sharing information go faster. Now, if you're on your own and you're an initiating fact finder, sometimes you get stuck in that paralysis by analysis because you say, do I have enough information?
Story of my life.
Right? Yeah. Do I have enough information? No. Okay, well, I got to go spend another week researching. And you would need someone to be like, that's a resistant fact finder, say, Betty, you have so much information. The answer is right here. Okay, that makes sense. I can see that. So.
And this explains why when I'm pushed up against a time deadline, why I can suddenly take action, because I no longer have the luxury of time to research. I have to be like, I can't fact find anymore. Go ahead and make a decision. So sometimes it's like better for me to like start a task close to it or create an artificial sense of urgency so that I could get myself out of the cycle of fact finding. But can you tell me about when fact finding is like a career, when it is important to have someone who is a fact finder as opposed to somebody who is like, I only need 2 bullets? Like when is it better to be a fact finder?
Yeah. There are, so you think about the, what was that?
I said, I'm thinking like a scientist.
Yeah. So initiating fact finding, that level of a bucket, a big gulp size cup of ability to do that much research, if you will, it's also about strategy. So being an entrepreneur does lend itself to being higher in quick start, which is taking risks and backing it up with data. So a lot of doctors, that need that can handle a lot of data, a lot of researchers, some scientists to some degree for sure. So people that are in strategies, consultants, business consultants, possibly. Let's see, who else? I think financial advisors a lot of the time can be higher in fact finder or accountants, because it's all about the strategy and the details and the kind of the numbers and analyzing things.
Okay. That explains why I'm a financial coach. I love numbers. Okay. So go ahead. I'm sorry. I think
That's okay.
where are we? What number are we on?
So
Follow
I
through?
think so follow through is how you plan and organize when you're problem solving. And the people that are initiating and problem solving, those are typically, I would say they would be great like operations people, because they are all about building out processes that are there for a reason. We have to have this step. They are planners of some kind, so a party planner, or again, like an accountant, possibly, because they're all about the long-term, connecting the past, the present, and the future, and having a step to make sure we don't miss anything. And a lot of the vast majority of my ADHD clients are resistant and follow through, and so we're dropping the ball all the time. Right? But so we need someone on our team that is an initiating follow through, potentially, to like, hey, I'm going to give you all these things, organize my calendar, help me create my processes and my CRM and all these type of things that like are in the back end that I just don't have the mental energy capacity to do.
Somebody who can take care of the details.
Yeah, all of the details. And I remember doing early, before I even knew my Kolbe results, getting into our CRM, which is like the back end of our business, are the emails that we send and where all of our client information is stored. And I had to audit one of our drip campaigns of like 30 emails, or probably it felt like that. It probably was like 8. But just having to go through and read this and then read this next one and then do this next one was just, I couldn't do it.
And people with ADHD, we hate boring, monotonous tasks.
Yes.
And so it makes sense that so many of us have low or a great resistance to follow through tasks, because okay, once we do it the first time, it's exciting, but now we're going to do this every day. Get somebody else to do it.
Yeah. And I think, what I've found is that ADHD is a magnifier for your Kolbe results. Because if you resist follow through, somebody that's neurotypical, they're going to resist it. Sure, they're going to resist it. But if I with ADHD, I resist hard doing the things that I don't have the mental energy to do. So does that make sense? But also, like, I think that's where on the other end, that's where the hyper focus comes in. I have mental energy for days, or you have, Betty, mental energy for days for fact finding, gathering information, strategizing, and to some degree, taking risks. So that's where you can get hyper focused on those tasks. And so it's this spectrum of like that, and then your ADHD amplifies that. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. The next one, the quick start.
Quick start. Yeah. So that's how you deal with risk and uncertainty. The bigger cup you have for that, the more that you take risks, you improvise. The people that are initiating a quick start are entrepreneurs a lot of the time, irregardless of ADHD. But also, you think about performers, improv comics like Wayne Brady, and performers that can improvise something. They're not doing the same thing over and over again. On the resistance side, on the 1, 2, or 3 side, these are the people that their motto is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like there is a protocol here for a reason, and I'm going to build that and make sure that doesn't happen.
Oh, they need to follow that rule.
Yeah. Yes. Yep.
And this explains my content creation personality. Like, I really struggle with making videos where I have to like write a script and have a formal process. But this type of conversation where it's kind of informal and I'm responding, and I have an idea of some of the questions I might want to go, but I may take a completely different direction. This comes more natural to me, where I'm able to respond in real time. It just is more comfortable for me, where everything else is like, the rigidity is, I don't want to do it. I can't do it. Do I have to do it this way? And if I do it, it takes me so long. It takes me so long to create a scripted piece of content.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And that is definitely a quick start. And so the people that are resistant quick starts, they resist kind of that risk and uncertainty. They need a script.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones, and there's nothing wrong with that. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But lean into the fact that you do need a script. And if somebody says, if I was a resistant follow through, Betty, and you were having me on this, I would be like, can you please tell me exactly what questions you're going to be asking me, so I can have time to think about what I want to say, because I don't want to go off the cuff and make a mistake. So that is totally fine. So ask for that, right? If you feel that you need those type of things. But for me, and I know my wife, and you know my wife very well, and for you, Betty, to some degree, it's like, if I just have a couple bullet points, I can riff and I'm good.
Yeah, that's why I was like, I sent you the whole different layout, not even an hour before we went live, and I was like, don't kill me. I just wanted you to get a chance to look at it right before we go on.
Yeah,
right before we go on.
All I needed.
But our quick start allowed you to be able to be like, all right, cool.
Yeah, really. Yep. Okay, sounds good. I got it. But so on the resistance side of things, those are people that are better administrators, and administrative assistants and operations people, because we have this in place for a reason, because they want to mitigate chaos.
So they're probably quality control as well.
Yes. Yep. Definitely.
Auditors.
Yes. A lot of times it's CPAs or those type of people that, hey, this code is we're enforcing this code. I'm not going to have any leeway on it because we have this for a reason, which is a great thing to have. You want to have that strength, and so we have to be able to figure out to lean into them a little bit.
Oh, one of the biggest observation is like, this test can really clarify if you're in the wrong field. Like, you might actually be with the right company in the wrong position.
Yes.
And seeing that, you're like, oh, this is why I thrived when my boss gave me this task. But when he gave me this task, I dropped the ball. Like, this is not a task like that I should be in. Because they were definitely tasks at my last corporate job that I just could kill it. I got tasked a lot of times with being on panels to be able to test things, to see if there's a more effective way to do something, to be able to envision like some new idea that they were thinking about implementing. And I got called on a lot of times, but then I might forget about the meeting, the plan. Like, you want me to now track the different details of, like, I don't want to, like, I just want to be in a room and verbally tell you what I think about it. I don't. So I struggled with that part of those big asks.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's such a great point. And when you are an employee, right, you can I don't want to say this. I think we kind of know, like, hey, this sounds like a great job for me. It sounds kind of fun. But then you start getting these tasks that start adding up that work against your grain. And that's where you start to get burnt out really, really quickly. And so when you're an employee, it's easy to get a new job. Well, it's not easy to, but like, you get a new job, right? Or you change positions. And so someone that is a resistant quick start, where they are working for a startup that has no SOPs, and they're just kind of like just winging it a little bit, that's not going to be very rewarding, or like a flow state kind of job for that person. And
they're like, we don't have a process.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's why we hired you, which is okay, cool. Let me help you create that process. But like, when that's not even part of the conversation, that's a problem. A really good example of this is another financial coach who I 99, and she was a lawyer, and she was working for the SEC, right? And so she was like auditing all these type of things. And just, I think she really hated her job, because she actually was initiating quick start and initiating backfire. So she loved the strategy. She loved the research and all those things, but she didn't love the monotony of, this is the protocol. This is why we do it. This is why your taxes say you should have done it this way. She needed to lean into like the quick start of being an entrepreneur. And so she made this new job that she was probably the first one ever as a financial coach for lawyers. And if you think about, like, well, a lawyer, well, how can a lawyer be, some lawyers be initiating quick start and some lawyers be a resistant quick start, or any of these? Well, Johnny Cochran was probably an initiating quick start because he didn't have a script when he's going and talking to and improvising his statements, his arguments. Yeah, he could improvise. So I think a lot of trial lawyers are typically best served when they're hiring quick start. But if you're like an estate tax attorney, like you don't need to improvise anything. Attorney. Yeah. It's all about, here is why we do it. You didn't follow the rule. We have to make sure we follow every single rule. So there's strengths in whatever you're doing. You have to find those.
Again, I love that pounding in this idea that being low or high is not necessarily bad. It's just knowing where you lie, because that will unlock where you're supposed to be professionally, or who you need to support you professionally. Like if you just simply say, you know what, I'm going to hire an administrative assistant to take care of the details. I have this great vision, these big ideas. I understand how things go. I'm willing to take the risk. I've already done the fact finding, but I need you to put all of these details in place to make sure that the emails go out and that phone calls get made and that the follow-up actions get taken. Like, take that off my plate so I can work in my zones of genius.
100%. Exactly. Okay. That's exactly it.
Last one, the one that it's the hardest to understand.
Yeah. So implementor, like I said, it's not like how you implement things that people give you. It's using tools and implements. And I think the best example is the higher your implementer results is, the more that you use implements and tools to solve problems. So people that are initiating implementers are typically like carpenters, electricians, surgeons, veterinarians, farmers, dentists. Like, they care about the quality of a tangible thing, right? And so obviously I want my surgeon, like, he's going to do the best job because he has mental energy to be handling tools, or she, all day, right? On the other end of the spectrum, like you, if you're a resistant implementer, you resist using tools to solve problems. So you solve more abstract problems like finance, like law, like philosophy.
Oh, okay. So let me go back to I resisted. I'm a stubborn child. Quick start was the one that I was like, no, I might have resisted the idea that I was a quick start too. I might have felt like, no, but I need to think. And to that point, you said yes, but once you've done fact finding and it takes you no time to be like, okay, downloading it, doing it, trying it. Once I have enough information. So yeah, you brought me back. Every time I resisted every last one. I'm a resisting resistor. So the implementer, I think when you first were talking about it, you were talking about vision, and I was like, I'm a great visionary. Like the way and then you went back to describe it was like, no, what I mean is, if you were to pack a trunk, I think was the example you gave. How would you likely do it? Would you just start picking up the luggage and putting it in the trunk to figure out the best way? Or would you think about in your mind how to best arrange them? And I was like, oh, definitely in my mind. I am definitely going to look at the size of all the boxes. I'm going to look at the space. And I'm like, I don't know if you've ever watched A Good Doctor.
Yeah, I've seen a couple. Yeah,
when he has these moments where he suddenly can see how to solve a problem, and he's envisioning like the way the blood is moving and how he can just see how it's going to work. That's how my brain works. I tell my daughter all the time, like, well, you can do mental math, and I would say, I'm not. I'm writing in my air paper, like I'm envisioning it because I need to see it to be able to envision how to take action. I don't want to physically move until I can see how it's going to work. So I'm just doing like air Legos in my head. Yes. And I was like, you're right. I felt like when you said it, I was like, no, I'm very much a physical person. I grew up around construction, my dad. And so I do like using my hands, but when I'm going to solve a problem, I'm still going to think about it, envision it before I ever pick my hands up to do anything.
Yes. 2 points, because I think you said two things that are exactly true. I mean, a lot of things, but so I don't know if you saw that, but if you see like the little hockey pucks right there on the very bottom, you envision. I don't know if you saw that or not.
No.
So people that are resistant implementers, they envision how they're going to solve that thing. So in your head. On the other end, the people that are initiating implementers, they demonstrate. So they're the people that are like, they make the little tiny mock-ups of the house so you can see it at scale. Or they're like, if a handyman has ever come to your home and they're like, well, let me show you how this thing. We're like, you don't need to show me. I get it. You know, I had a couple. One was a landscaper, and the other one was a financial coach. And the husband was the landscaper, and he was an initiating implementer. His wife, who was a financial coach, was a resistant implementer, and he's out there like, oh, hey, babe, come outside. Let me show you where I'm going to put all these plants. I put them exactly where they're going to be. I used paint to demonstrate where the mulch is going to go. She's like, you could have just like told me. I didn't need to see the demonstration in real life, you know? So it's.
Now, here's the thing though, is I would consider myself, and I'm curious if there's any kind of like exceptions to how like things about your, like that maybe neurodivergence, or maybe just your life experience changes where you might not resist what other people do just because of how, like, for example, my dad doing home maintenance and home designing. I've always been outside with him building things. I'm more of a kinesthetic learner. I learn by physically doing them. When I'm doing math in my head, I'm doing the problem in my head. So for me, I do see that I want to see it first in my mind, but I need to like move my body physically to, I don't know if it's to help me really remember or there's some sort of connection there, but I don't feel like I'm also not physically doing something too in my problem solving process. Or maybe it's not problem solving, maybe it's physically when I'm learning, or I don't know.
Yeah. So I think your learning styles, I think, are more of a cognitive trait. So, which is not related to Kolbe. Remember, not related to the cognitive part of your mind. So you could be a kinesthetic learner. You could be, you know, like all those things is more of a cognitive thing. So that can be independent. So
Okay.
There's that part. Yeah. But the second thing that I was going to mention is that there are so many examples of your like what you said, your dad was in construction and like he was probably an initiating implementer. And what you said was that I like that kind of stuff. And like is an affective word. Like is an emotion. It's a personality thing. So you can like fixing things around the house. And you can do those things because it reminds you of your dad, because you know how to do those things, because he taught you how to do those things, which is cognitive. That doesn't change that you only have this much mental energy to do those things.
Oh, this explains why I love organizing closets and things like that. But I don't actually, I'm here and there with when I want to do it. I love this, beautiful. It looks really nice. But the idea of daily home maintenance, get somebody else to do it. I want to hire a maid as soon as possible. I want to hire somebody to do my laundry as quickly as possible. As beautiful as my closet is, I want to have nothing to do with it.
Exactly. Yeah. And so like early in the morning, when you're just starting your day, you have all your mental buckets are full. You're like, oh, I'm going to organize my closet, you know, because you have, even though it's this much, you have mental energy to do it. At the end of the day, what's the last thing you want to do? Probably organize your closet, right? So because you've already depleted that, because it's just a little shop.
So let's explore a little further. So we know my numbers, my results, and hopefully it's giving context, because everybody's different. Everybody, you know, these are not strengths and weaknesses. Somebody else is going to do this test and they're going to get completely different numbers. How does this apply in business? How does that mean, like when you were talking about like the time of the day, does that mean I put all my hard tasks at the beginning of the day, or do I charge myself up even more in the beginning with my favorite, my low resistance task, and so that I have the energy to do something like in the middle of the day? Like, how do I sandwich my battery?
Yeah, great question. What I like to do is, what I recommend is that those tasks that are especially if you're the only one that can do them. And they're like, man, I know I need to do it. It's hard. It's draining. It feels like it's like I'm just slogging through mud trying to get that thing done. That is always something that you should start as early as possible. For that exact reason. You know, I at least have this much mental energy to do it. So I might as well put it towards that, and then I can do something energizing after the fact. As you work out throughout go ahead.
But the ones that only I can do, like the ones that are like, this is on me, I can't even offload this to anybody, so I better get it done first. Okay.
Yeah. Let me back up and say, so when there's something, and what this is one of the major things that I do first with all of my clients is we have to identify every single task, role, and responsibility that you have, and whether it is something that is a hell yes for you to do or a hell no for you to do.
Okay.
And when it's so, is that something that you should be doing? Yeah, that I love doing that. It's energizing. I get hyper focused. I'm productive. I feel like I'm in my flow state when I'm doing it. Keep that on your plate. All of the other things that end up not being like I call that stuff, especially when we have ADHD, it's your ADHD superpower. Everything else is your ADHD kryptonite. And there's only really 4 things you can do with those tasks, roles, and responsibilities. It's delegate them. So hiring someone else to do that thing for you. And those people, and it sounds weird, but those people's superpower should be doing that task. And a lot of the time, especially if you have a team, you're like, man, I don't want to give that to my executive assistant because that is such a horrible, like, I hate doing that. Why would they want to do that? But that's their superpower. They would love to do that for you. You know, so give that. They will take that. They will do it way better than you. They actually get energized doing that crap that you don't want to do. So it's like that is their gift. Give them that. Let them use that gift, so you can delegate it. The other thing I'll say, the other thing really quickly I'll say about delegating is a lot of people will say, I can't afford to hire someone right now. And my response is, you can't afford not to hire someone to do those things that are taking you 5 hours to do when it takes them 20 minutes to do. When you avoid doing them, and you're missing out on revenue because you're spending your time just putting around, either not doing those things or not doing it at 100% efficiency like somebody else will do. And there's research out there that says that when you delegate something and you hire someone out, that gives you a 5 times ROI on their pay. So if you pay someone $50 an hour, you're making $250 in return. Right. So that's why it's important.
This was the part that gave me permission to hire an assistant, a virtual assistant before, because most of the time when you start a business, they're like, be scrappy, DIY a lot of the stuff yourself until your business is making enough money till it makes sense. Yeah. But for me, it made sense to hire quickly, not to wait until I reached some standard pinnacle of now you should hire somebody. Yes. I needed to hire somebody for these tasks so that I could spend more hours on the tasks that were income generating, the tasks that give me joy. Because for me, the tasks right before a client call and the tasks right after a client call, I hate them. But I could be tired, sleepy, sick, sad, grieved. And when I get on a client call, I am like, when you talked about it fills me up. And I'm like, afterwards, I'm like, I feel better about life, about everything. Like, it fills me up. I can't explain it, but being on a call with the client, no matter whether the financial situation is hard or exciting or complicated, I just feel revived from those conversations. And then immediately after, there's some dreadful follow-through task that's necessary that I hated to have to do. And that was making me want to step away when I really could have just hired someone to take care of that task on my behalf if I really, really just don't want to do it. Because I didn't have to. These weren't the you have to do it tasks. They were little things that easily could have been done by, honestly, Jordan. So, and I don't know why I was giving myself the pressure to have to do it. And I think it's like this feeling of you're supposed to do, like this feeling as a business owner that you should you should be doing everything. Should you be? Even in the corporate setting, I remember my boss telling me, when you were talking about someone else is excited to do the task you're dreading, and that's why you don't want to give it. My boss was telling me there was an administrative assistant who she was, gosh, she wasn't Australian. She was from somewhere, but she just like delighted in doing all of the like admin-y things. And my boss would tell me all the time, like, give her these things. And I'm like, well, no, I don't want to give them to her because one, they're my job. And also, I felt like the job was dreadful. I don't want to I don't want to do it. It felt mean, but she delighted in them. And he said to me, you can do these jobs, you do them really well, but what tasks can't anybody else do but you? That's what you should be focusing on your energy on. And it gave me permission to give those things away. And I realized like she loves these things. I was telling myself because I hated them, everybody hates them, when it really wasn't true. And you gave me permission to give a lot away. Oh, you can't.
Yeah.
I love giving stuff away now. Like,
yeah, good. That's awesome. I'm so glad. Because now, like, look at where you are, and think about where your mental energy is at the end of the day, like today compared to a couple years ago before you started to delegate. And I mean, it's just obviously different.
yeah, I was depressed. I was in a great depression. And I don't mean that economically. I meant that personally. I was.
Yeah.
That was part of the country. I mean, there were a lot of things that contributed to that, but that was part of it.
Sure.
Professionally, I knew this was something I was wanting to do. And there was this feeling of, I should be doing these tasks and I don't know why I can't do them. I didn't have the ADHD diagnosis, and I also didn't understand my cognitive abilities, battery life. That's what I'm going to call it. My cognitive battery life.
Yes. I love that's it. I'm going to steal that actually. No, that's great.
Please steal it.
But that is exactly what it is. And so when, so we talked about, you can delegate those things, right? You can delete things. You can say, you know what, is this valuable? I'm sorry?
Do we even need to do this?
Do we need to do this? Why am I focusing on this? The ROI is not there. It's not valuable. Is it something I need to be doing now? No. Is it something I can revisit in 6 months, next year? Sure. But there's other obviously stuff that's more important that we need to be working on, or that need to get done. It's always
here with the ADHD, right? We tend to pick up all kinds of hobbies and things. And so I'm imagining that the deleting is hard for us because, first of all, we're taking on more ideas than anybody else because our brain is firing like quickly, and hobbies. And then there's this shame with, we did all this work and now we're going to throw it away. We're going to waste it, or we spent money on this and then we're not going to use it. So that area of managing our abilities is, how to resolve that particular issue is hard for, I'm imagining harder for neurodivergent people, because deleting is, will we need it again? Our analyzing brain is thinking about all the trillion ways we might need this idea, task, thing we created.
Yeah, I think that's a really valid problem that a lot of ADHD, especially ADHD entrepreneurs, have. And I think what I see that is it's that thing is more in alignment with your mental energy than the other stuff that you're doing. So it's almost like our way of, I'm so, like you said, depressed or blah feeling or in a rut, or I don't know which way is up because I have to do all of the things. Well, you know what? I bet starting a podcast, that'd be really awesome. So I'm going to focus on that, because people with businesses start podcasts, right? But you don't have SOPs in place yet. And you don't, you're not setting up the back end of things that are way higher priority than a podcast. But the podcast energizes us, and our ADHD wants to, like I said, amplify that and magnify that. So I think that is where those things come in, and it just needs to, I'm not saying that you can't do that, but priority wise, it's way down here. Let's get the other things that are higher priority that may not be fun. Let's figure out how those can get done.
And that explains why, if you enjoy that, you have lots of content. You've recorded podcast episodes, but you haven't scheduled them to go out. Or you've recorded video, but you haven't edited them so that they could actually go out. You have a lot of stuff that is not in place yet because it requires the follow through that we just don't want to do, or don't have the battery life to do for very long.
Yeah. Or people that are, and this is, it's okay. I'm not trying to shame anybody, but when the people that are like, I'm going to go like put all in on Instagram and TikTok or whatever, and just put out content all the time, but they don't have any clients. They haven't created the business side of things that are necessary to sustain that first. And so it's not that it's not a valuable thing. It's just not a valuable thing right now.
Right. Oh, this is such a good conversation. I see the people in the audience they've been giving so much love in here. Thank you, Gerald Griffin. Such a wonderful conversation. I appreciate the vulnerability and insight from each of you.
Oh, thank you, Gerald.
Kim W says, this is good, multiple times in these comments. So I'm glad you guys are getting value from this conversation, because I am. And I know this stuff, and hearing it again, I'm like, it's like reading a good book again. It's like you didn't get it, or I'm reading the Bible again. Like you when you hear it again, you get something different. And because I'm in this different stage of my business, a different stage of my understanding of ADHD and neurodivergence, I'm also hearing it with a different lens. So I think, like, for those of you guys who are hearing this for the first time, I encourage you to come back and listen to it again at different stages of your life or in your business, when you're struggling again, to revisit this conversation, to see how, where you might be having the problem. And also, if you need support, can we talk about that part? And if I cut you off and you haven't finished your thought, feel free to finish your thought and come to this question. But you can know all this stuff cognitively, right? And still not be able to activate all the wisdom that you've just provided us on what the problem is. And this is where coaching typically comes up for me and my clients with ADHD. Like, they intellectually understand what they should be doing with their money, but why they're not doing it is completely different. And also their physical resistance to the tasks that are necessary to have a better relationship and better outcomes with their finances is why they need a coach. They're not needing a coach for information. They're needing a coach for accountability, support, redirection, the excitement and the motivation that comes with it, the weeding out the analysis paralysis of all the things they're considering when they need to make financial decisions. I'm imagining the same is true on the business side of it. So can you tell us a little bit more about how the executive coaching could support a business owner who knows that they've got their KOLBE scores, they know what they're resisting, not resisting? How does coaching then add to that conversation?
Yeah, great question. So I think, especially when you're a solopreneur, or you have, like, it's just you, or maybe you have like a part-time administrative assistant or something like that. You have a couple things that are off your plate. Coaching comes into play, especially the way that I do things, in that we need to identify what those tasks, roles, and responsibilities are that you should not be doing, and give yourself permission to not do them, one way or the other. I think I didn't finish my thought, but
I just realized that delete.
Yes. So we said delegate, delete, automate. And that could be like email templates. If you have the same email over and over again that you're sending, rather than writing it, from scratch, or like using a CRM to automate some emails. And then the final thing is figure out how to do it your own way. And those are where the big strategies come in, especially with KOLBE, is like doing those tough things as early as possible. When you're drained, like it's halfway through the day and you're like, I can't do anything else, you go lean into those things that are energizing to you. So that's why you want to maybe alternate the energies of your day, or keep them as consistent as possible, depending on what it is. But like, if you have a really tough administrative thing you're doing in the morning, then you probably want to do a coaching call right after that, because that will energize you. And then you can do some of that more yucky stuff, So those are some strategies. But when it comes to coaching, the first thing that I focus on is just telling them and identifying what those roles, tasks, and responsibilities are. And let's come up with strategies on how to get those off your plate or lean into them more. And I don't know if you know, if anybody's heard of the 80-20 rule, but it's where it says that 20% of your efforts give you 80% of your results.
Say that again, because I don't think they heard you.
Yes, I'm going to say it again. Hear me one more time. 20% of your efforts give you 80% of your results. And so that could look like something like, well, I have maybe I'm just trying to think of a really good example that everybody can think of. But like, I have all of these products I'm offering, but only 2 give me, like, is where all my revenue comes from. Why are you doing the other 8? Something like that. It's this principle. It's like this economic principle that's like this law of physics almost, that 20% of the population has 80% of the wealth. It's that shows up still. That still jives. So it's those type of things. So what I like to have people do is, let's figure out what that 20% is. The rest of that you give to somebody else. We find out what their 20% is. You give the rest of that to somebody else. Then everyone is using their superpowers. Everyone's in the zone of genius. Everyone is super productive. Everyone is maximizing their revenue generation possibility. And that's how we get to that point of like, I'm doing all day is what I love to do.
I love that. If somebody in the comments would mind putting that in the comments, because I need somebody to come back and find that 80-20 rule. I have heard the 80-20 rule before. I think I heard it reading the book, The 4-Hour Work Week.
Yeah, probably. Yep.
About the 80-20, and I have seen it in a lot of different contexts of life. So I'm glad that you brought it back up, because somebody else just brought that up. They've been reading a book about it recently, and so like within this week. So the fact that you just brought it back up again is crazy, which means I never think anything is a coincidence. I need to go back and revisit that some more. But that you can give away the idea of giving away 80% of what you do, and giving it away, like you said, doesn't necessarily mean giving away to a person. It could be automating it. Like, why is anybody doing this task? And with this new age of technology, artificial intelligence, that has given me back so much of my life, being able to give away some of the analysis paralysis, the fact finding. I love to do it, but it's speeding up the amount of research I need to do. There's so many ways that we can delegate and automate things that don't necessarily require hiring a person, because sometimes financially they really can't afford to hire somebody. Like, they can't afford to not afford them, but they really can't.
Right. Yes.
Technology is definitely a resource.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think that's a big part of setting yourself up for success, not failure. The second part I really think that's most important is the accountability that coaching brings. Because I think it's easy to justify not doing a lot of things, especially when you have ADHD, especially the things that we know are important, but man, that's hard. Like that thing is, I just don't want to do it, and I'm not going to do it. So the accountability comes into play there. The helping set up the business so that you can succeed. I said that in one way, but all the other ways of hiring the right people and using the right social media strategy for you, creating the lead magnet that works the best for you. Like, all of those things in the background can be set up based on the foundation, which is, what are your strengths? What's your superpowers? The last thing that I think, there's a lot more that's way important, but I think the other most important thing for business owners, especially that have ADHD, is that goal setting. And it's just something that a lot of entrepreneurs with ADHD just resist doing. Like, I know what my goal is. Did you write it down? Is it on paper? Is it just arbitrary revenue goal? Like, why, if I want to make this much money, but why?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that sounds right. That's not an answer.
Mm-hmm.
We need the goals that we set for our business to be in alignment with our vision for what we want to be as a person, the work-life balance that we want to have, the impact that we can have on other people's lives, which is your purpose in life, like the money that you want to be making for yourself, but also the money that you want to be paying your employees. I want to pay my employees a livable wage.
Mm.
I want to be able to donate to my favorite charities. I want to use my business as a vehicle to make the change that I want to see in the world. And a lot of people unfortunately put that ahead, like that they're sacrificing their happiness because they're so purpose driven. And that's okay to be purpose driven. But imagine if you put your work-life balance first and you said, you know what, I'm going to really focus on maximizing my revenue so that I can give X times amount back to the charities or the causes or the change that I want to see. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes so much sense. So it's a couple things I wanna circle back to when you talked about, like, as a business owner, putting things in place, like as simple as like your lead magnet, that because I never even considered that you could be triggering your most resistant task with the type of lead magnet you put into place, because
Sure. Yeah.
the work that is required after that could
Mm-hmm.
force you to do tasks you don't want to do.
Absolutely.
Even the type of like design, like initially I was thinking like, oh, I should have a lead magnet that looks like this. Well, my clients are ADHD, I am too. We probably prefer to watch a video over reading a long newsletter anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I creating something that doesn't make sense for the way I want to absorb information, or and neither does my ideal client? And I was working against both my Kolbe and my neurodivergence in that process. And we don't all until we have someone like you who's able to illuminate that, we find ourselves creating more problems or
Mm-hmm.
frustrations in our business.
Yeah.
So I do want to revisit the power of coaching, and helping people be able to see things. Because I feel like even with financial coaching, I always say, like, you don't have to be bad to be better. You don't have to be
Mm-hmm.
bad with money to want to be better.
Yeah.
They're great athletes, they all have coaches. They're not bad. Like LeBron is the best
Yeah.
basketball player right now, right? Simone Biles.
Right.
We know they're great and they have coaches, and it's not because they're bad. It's because they understand their coach has a perspective that they
Mm-hmm.
are too close to the problem to see. The
Yes.
coach is on the sideline seeing the court from this angle, where the player is on the court
Mm-hmm.
going this way. They can only see things from their vantage point, and the coach is giving the perspective. And so you're able to see something. I'm in my business, working in my business.
Mm-hmm.
I can't see the perspective you see from the outside. And so you're saying, hey, I noticed something. You're doing this over here, which could work for somebody, but for you, do you realize that this is where your friction point is? Like,
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I always use those examples of LeBron has so many different coaches. He has a sleep coach. He has like telling him how to sleep the best, and nutritionists and shooting coaches and all these type of things. Michael Jordan had shooting coaches. Everybody that is, I think all of those people that are extremely successful, especially athletes, but even the best business people in the world have business coaches. And it's that outside perspective, that third party, um, uh, that can just see everything that you can't see. And I think you said exactly right. Like, it's because you're in your business, you're always working on your business. I'm sorry, you're working in your business. Having a coach allows you to work on your business.
that's okay. So I'm feeling a connection, because I'm like, with your finances, you're busy in your finances, like you're spending,
Mhm.
you're doing the thing, and you're not able to
Yeah.
step outside of it and objectively see the big picture of your financial life, because you're in the day-to-day motion of managing
Yeah.
your real life and money that's necessary to manage your real life. And you need somebody who's not emotionally attached to your real life to help you see what's happening.
Definitely.
That makes so much, the power of coaching. Oh,
Yeah.
thank you for that.
Yeah.
So can you tell me, does the Kolbe illuminate things for your personal budget, your personal finances? Can it tell you more than just professionally, how you do things? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Let me pull up yours really fast just so I can see. And I'll use you as an example. But yeah, so it does just give you some more specific strategies about one, like if you are a financial coach, be like that this person, like me, if you're my financial coach, you know that I'm a resistant follow through.
mhm.
I would gladly pay you money, first of all, to just be my money manager.
Right.
I would gladly delegate that to you.
Take it off my hands entirely.
Yeah,
That's what it feel
yeah,
like.
right, exactly. But so that, but that is a luxury that a lot of people can't afford, but that is a thing. But what those people like a resistant follow through like me, if I needed it, and that's why I married a financial coach, and I was her first client. But like they need things automated, like going in and like I would almost guarantee that there's nobody that's a resistant follow through that ever used the old checkbook register. Like that was the financial instruction that my mom gave me, like how to balance your checkbook and that kind of stuff. After that, I 100% did not use that because I'm not going in. What did I spend? Now I got to go look at the thing that the bank sent me, and I got to go in and double check. I ain't doing that. I am resisting doing that.
So they
So
daily tracking.
yep, it's just like the step-by-step tracking, following, those type, even maintaining. And so having as many things as automated as possible, and then going in and like making reconciling as easy as possible, is one strategy. A lot of times financial coaches that are resistant, clients of financial coaches that are resistant follow-throughs, the sessions, maybe you've had this, they're kind of frustrating for the coach because all it is let's just go in and I'm going to hold you accountable to reconcile your accounts. And so to a financial coach, it's like, we're not making, this is not, I want to see you having more growth and more. But to me, that's worth it. Once I get a handle on that and I start to build some habits are cognitive, by the way. And so when we build habits, we can learn to do these things, some things. So that's why habits are super important. Yeah, that's interesting. Let's see, I'm just looking at just to get some inspiration, but somebody that's a resistant quick start that's looking for a financial coach would say, show me the right way to budget, because I'm not going to figure it out on my own. So then you say, here's your step-by-step process. This is the way that it's been done. This is the least risky. That's really what they're asking for. People that are initiating implementors, you might have someone that's an initiating implementor and they want to buy that GMC professional grade pickup truck. That's, how much are those now? $120,000? I don't know what it is. But as a financial coach, those financial coaches are like, why would you want to spend that much money on that truck? Well, because initiating implementer cares about the tangible quality, the professional grade. I want that leather stitching because that's never going to wear down. I want the motor that's going to last for 250, 300,000 miles because I know that's going to last for a long time. So what the financial coach needs to do for those people is says, great, I love that for you. Let's start to build a fund so we can pay for that with cash as much as possible, or whatever that strategy might be, so that we can get that for you because that's important for you. Initiating fact finders might be the people that are, this is the last one. They want to know the details and they might actually be all about the strategy, but they might, when they're comparing things, comparing options for this savings account versus this savings account, they need to get out of their head about the level of research that they need to make a decision. And you can kind of be that, like you said, set that deadline. I'm going to let you research, but you have until Friday. I'm going to be the one that says when you have enough information.
I see the fact finding, making it hard to make decisions. The coaching is being able to help you create a sense of urgency, the follow through, sometimes just doing the task on the call is enough for them. And they're never going to do their homework. They're always going to have to do their homework with you.
And that's okay.
Having that sense of awareness is like, these are the expectations. And now they don't have to feel bad about it. Like I am who I am. They've got the awareness and they're asking for what they need from you. They're saying confidently and not, unapologetically, hey, can I do this task on this call? Because they have accepted themselves and said, hey, this is the support that I need to make change in my progress. I simply won't do it if I don't have a body double.
Exactly. And, I think a lot of people have a lot of shame around finances for that reason, is that they might say, how do you budget? How to budget? And they go and they find a budget and they try it and it fails them. They didn't fail it. It failed them because it doesn't honor their ADHD and it doesn't honor their strengths. And so they're like, man, I'm just bad with money. Or they might say, they might go on to like social media and ask, hey, what do you guys think about getting a financial coach? And somebody that doesn't have ADHD or that is maybe a higher fact finder, higher follow through says, it is easy. Anybody can do it. Well, but I can't. So what does that mean about me? Right. And there's the people like, why do you need to go to a financial advisor for a financial coach? It's easy. You just read these 70,000 books that I've read, and it's like, but I'm not going to do that. So am I dumb? And it's just, there's so much shame and guilt around what is actually our strength, but finances and budgeting may not be your strength, and that's okay. You delegate that, right? We just talked about that. So
and
you can delegate that to a financial coach.
And it's not that it's not your strength because you're not smart enough. It's not your strength because the tasks that are involved with managing money don't work with your cognitive abilities. And so you either need support, you need to maybe share that task with your spouse, marry a financial coach, or hire a coach to help you do those tasks, because unfortunately, if you can't afford to delegate that and hiring somebody to be your daily money manager, because that is not cheap, then you are going to have to do it. So you need to figure out a way to get it done in a way that works for you. I love that your fourth one was do it your own way. I love that. And I know I've held you for a really long time, so I don't.
That's okay. Hey, this is in my zone of genius. So I can't believe it's almost been 2 hours. So it's.
Yeah, we're both in our zone. I love this though, because I feel like people who are going to watch this replay, I want them to know that the information you're sharing is relevant, whether you're an entrepreneur or not. It's relevant if you are just in a corporate space. It's relevant to know this if you plan on being a contractor and being hired, to know what strengths to articulate. If you're applying for a job, to be able to understand your strengths, you know now how to position yourself against their weaknesses, the areas that they don't want to do. So you now are able to ask their questions, to ask questions of them, to figure out like what's frustrating for them in their business, and be able to identify, man, I'm the perfect fit. This is beyond my resume that says I went to this college and worked at this company. These are the qualitative skills that we often struggle to articulate. And so it's helpful, like you said, in your ability to understand what's actually frustrating with you with your money management process. That maybe it's not that you can't budget, but you're doing it in a way that doesn't work for the way your brain naturally works. And it will help you understand the people that you love, because you might be doing all these things just great, and you're in conflict with your spouse, you're in conflict with your kids, you're in conflict with your coworkers, simply because you don't understand them. And we're taking things personal that are not personal.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
So, you actually proactively answered like my next two questions. And so,
whoops. Sorry.
No, that's not a whoops. That's a good thing. That means the conversation flowed naturally exactly where it needed to be. What I want to know, speaking of like relationships, is, and you kind of did touch on this, because it's like, who as a business owner, I'm looking now for someone, like a lot of times people are like, I want to hire another me. Should you be hiring another me, or shouldn't you? Should your accountability buddy be someone like you or someone who's different? Should your husband be somebody like you or someone that's different? Or should you have a little bit of both?
Yeah, that is a great question. You know what? While I'm talking, I'm going to multitask because I can do that. But so the horrible answer, the first answer is it depends. As everything always depends. But when you're hiring, it's not necessarily that you want. So the negative thing about finding someone that is like me is that it's your clone, especially when we're talking about like your cognitive Kolbe results. So it's, if you and I were relatively the same, things aren't going to be done differently. Nobody is taking up the stuff that neither one of you still don't do. Right? So that is a negative generally, to find someone that is similar to you. You want to find someone that has the strengths that are in alignment with the responsibility.
Okay.
So, but we typically don't find a partner based on how you problem solve. So I've seen couples that are literally exactly the same numbers. I've seen them that they're literally exact opposites every way around. And either way, that is totally fine, because what you need to know is, well, let me say it this way. What that shows up as is conflict. So if you are you are initiating follow through, and so you are very planned, you're very regimented, you plan a vacation, and everything has, like, every minute has something in it. And you say to your spouse, who's a resistant follow through like me, hey, why don't you plan our next vacation? That would be a great gift for me. I would be like, okay. And like everything would be last minute. Everything would be like, hey, we're gonna have lots of free time and we can figure it out like once we get there. But what my spouse that's initiating follow through needs is, I want to know exactly when it's I want to know the agenda.
I want to know what to pack.
I want to.
Yes. There's going to be.
Yep. I want to know everything. And so, but like that, when you don't know that is like what my strength is, and that I shouldn't be in charge of that because you do it differently than me, that's conflict. But if somebody said, if the same situation says, hey, I know, Michael, I know you're resistant follow through. I would like you to plan our vacation, and I'm okay with having a little bit of free time, but I would like to have more of an agenda. So I might say, oh, that's great, but just give me a little bit more time. I'll be able to kind of piece things together. I'm not going to piece it together in a day or a week. I might need a month. Or yes, I'm going to hire a travel agent to plan that for me, So, but once you know that conflict is actually, once you know that that's where your conflicts are, that's actually called synergy. Because we balance each other out, and we just have to know how to, how to work together.
And I think that knowledge gives you something to go to therapy with, but like how to work through those differences and not take them personal. Because I think that's the thing. It's like, if you didn't plan it, you don't care about me, you must don't love me, you know me, I thought you knew me, why would you do it this way? And and it's really about really understanding that other person. And I think and the reason why, even though this is nothing to do with entrepreneurship, is important because some people are in business with their partners. And it comes up, and then you end up making something that is a work problem, a romantic problem, or or something like a how you do things problem, and it's important to understand that, because even if you're not working in a business, your home is also a business that requires a lot of executive functions that you don't necessarily you're being tasked with a task that maybe you shouldn't be doing, that maybe your spouse should be doing, or maybe your spouse shouldn't be doing, and you just assume because he's the man or he's the woman or she's the woman and they should be doing that really is not their strength. That we need to really assess the person. So I love this conversation. The last thing I want to do is I want to play rapid fire. I like to make things a little bit fun because ADHD, we want to enjoy. And so it's a quick 10-word game.
Okay.
I want you to say the first word that comes to mind when I say my word or phrase.
Okay. I hope Dr. Barry is not watching, because she's probably going to learn a lot about me. Or tell me what's wrong up here.
So she may come back. Well, no, but she's a joy. I love her.
I'm just joking.
ADHD.
Strength.
Budgeting.
Yuck.
Entrepreneurship.
Empower.
Family.
Love.
Mental health.
Oh, important.
Self-care.
I was going to say underutilized.
Fun.
Ooh. Happy was the first thing that came to mind.
Music.
Oh man. Music is I'm going to say it's release.
Favorite TV show.
Oh gosh. Parks and Recreation.
And the last one is time.
Management.
Perfect for you.
Yes.
Speaking of time and time management, we are almost out of time. But before we go, I wanted the audience to know where they can find you, if they needed to navigate burnout in their business or just in general. If this conversation has sparked them to just be curious about their Kolbe, whether they're in business or not, and they want to do a Kolbe assessment, how do they go about doing it? And how do they go about reaching out to you for executive coaching should they need it?
Yeah. So my website is flowstateexecutivecoaching.com. And I think thank you for sharing that. So you can always go there and contact me there. I'm on Instagram at Flow State Executive Coaching, and my YouTube is the same. And you can always email me at Michael at flowstateexecutivecoaching.com. That's my other email address. But then I also have a link tree that I think Bee is going to share that has some resources. It has my website. It has my WhatsApp on there. So that's kind of where I am. Is there another question in there? I forgot what you said.
The Kolbe, how do they go about?
Oh, yes. So I do have a separate kind of one-off session especially for entrepreneurs that do want to know about your strengths and how to use them. And it's so you can email me and ask about a Kolbe interpretation for entrepreneurs. And I do that, and you get the Kolbe A, and one of the which is what we're talking about. But there's also one that is super important that I use for my clients as well as the Kolbe B. And B, I don't know if you remember getting that, but basically it says your A is your truth. That is how you problem solve. That is your unchanging strength that you have. Your B says, now B, what is it? What are the requirements for doing your job? And that helps you see the gaps in where you are, and that helps us just strategize even more. And then from there, I do a 90-minute interpretation strategy session. So we talk about your Kolbe results, but then we come up with the specific strategies of what to delegate, what to delete, how to do it your own way.
Okay, so the Kolbe B, they're telling you what their profession is or their desired profession is, and you're helping them be able to see the difference between how they would naturally do things and what this job is going to require of them, so they can proactively know, does this make sense for me, or at least know how to prepare to go in there and be set up for success.
Yep, I couldn't have said it better, and I didn't. So that is exactly right.
I love that. That might be my superpower, reframing something that was already there. That's a... if I had to say it from scratch, it would have been terrible, but I'm good at revising.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Michael, and thank you, family, my budgeting baddies who are on this call. Baddies spelled BADHDIES. And thank you to my friends and family who just joined because they love and support me and my mission. Thank you to the family and friends and employers and employees of those who have ADHD and who are just joining to learn more about it and how they can be more supportive to their loved ones and employees and employers. Thank you, Michael of Flow State Executive Coaching, for spending almost 2 hours with us, pouring in all this knowledge into us and our audience. I appreciate you so much. I thank you so much for your time. I cannot say it enough how meaningful this conversation was to me. And I want to ask you before we leave, is there anything you want to leave the audience with? A thought?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing that I think people struggle with is that there is, I just want to validate that you have inherent value and strength, and there are people that have told you to do things differently in the past that were wrong to tell you how to do things. And that doesn't mean that you're a bad person. That means that you have strengths and we need to find them. So yeah, I think that's what I want to say.
I love that. Thank you so much for building up my audience and making us feel seen and heard and felt. And in that last section, it made me make my daughter feel seen and heard. And it's making me revisit how I need to approach her and making sure
Mm.
that the words that I'm using are affirming her
Mm.
gifts and not destroying her confidence just because she's
Yeah.
processing something differently and wanting to
Mhm.
go about doing it differently. So thank you so much for those words. And thank you for being on the show today.
All right, my pleasure.
Until next time, audience, we want to see you continue to grow because I know I'm still growing and I hope that you guys are growing too. Bye now.
Bye.